had to be rescued from floodwaters in Allegheny County,
live.
Maryland.
Okay.
I'll talk to you more about
Okay.
it afterwards, but I'll forward it to you.
Okay, I appreciate it. All right, I have 4 o'clock, so we can start. We'll call this work session for the Mayor and City Council of the City of Frostburg to order. And we'll have the call the roll, please.
Commissioner Ritchie,
Here.
Commissioner Grove,
Here.
Commissioner Forsyth,
Here.
Commissioner Carter,
Here.
and Mayor Lawson.
Present. All right, we have removed one special presentation from tonight's agenda because Deidre's not able to leave her house, so we will push that to the June meeting. And we'll proceed then with item 3A, which is the General Assembly review with Rich.
Thank you, Mayor Todd, council members. Thank you for the time this afternoon. Wanted to preface this, I'll give a very high-level overview because with you is your end of session report, which really does encapsulate a lot of what I'll be sharing. So I'll do some more of the highlights. Overall, I think you would all agree that some of the major issues in Annapolis that we face are still lingering. And the two biggest issues were the budget and the solvency of the state, and then the second largest issue was combating the rising cost of energy and the energy that we're trying to generate, but also that we're actually bringing in is causing a lot of ratepayers a lot of heartache because their bill keeps rising. So those were two of the largest issues that we saw this year, and embedded in between those two topics, we had almost over 3,000 bills that we were tackling. So with all of those bills, we looked at every one of them, and there were a variety of bills that we were monitoring for Frostburg and Allegheny County. There were some bills that we actually got involved in, and some of those included Mayor Todd's support for the extension or the continuation or the revisions, however you want to place it, with the George Edwards Fund bill. Mayor Todd came down to testify, and Mayor Ray from Cumberland brought in some written testimony. I also had the pleasure of working with Emily and with Hayden on a couple bills that were of impact to Frostburg, primarily around the water revolving loan program, and then also a new bill that was being introduced this year combating sewage sludge application and the issues related to the forever chemicals that are in sewage sludge. We spent probably, of those three major bills, on top of some of the other ones that are in the report, I think we spend the majority of our time on that sewage sludge bill. I think I talk to him almost every other day. And I will say that really, had it not been for the tenacity and the work with Frostburg and Cumberland, I would have thought this bill would have passed in its current posture when it was originally drafted. MML really didn't have this on their radar till we brought it to their attention, and through our exchange and weekly meetings, they finally saw the impacts that this was going to happen with municipalities, and some of my colleagues realized, you know what, it's not just going to impact Western Maryland, it's going to impact parts of Montgomery County. And then through sort of the organic discussion, we realized that this was something that needed a much bigger deep dive. And through our conversations with the sponsors of the bills, we had some revisions to it. It made it slightly less unreasonable, I guess is the best way to put it, but it still needed a lot of work. And it was literally on the week before session ended, there was one last work session where we were still kind of holdouts, saying it's still not a workable piece of legislation that we can endorse. And I think through those ongoing discussions, I think we saw one last rally cry from some of the other stakeholders to say that we cannot, in good conscience, pass a bill that's going to be this big of an impact financially to our customers and our constituents. And however way you look at it, fortunately or unfortunately, the bill did not pass. And I think for the bill sponsors and the stakeholders that were proponents of the bills, we had a really good exchange, but I think they had to realize too that it was not a bill ready for prime time, and it was going to require much more time for all of us to sit down, maybe over the interim, to discuss what is the best pathway forward that we can all get behind. The last conversations I had with the sponsors a couple weeks ago was during some of the bill signing ceremonies in Annapolis. And they agreed. They said, we are looking forward to taking the time to really walk through what is, the best vehicle for next year. we'll probably have a bill that's gonna be reintroduced, but certainly not into the same posture that we had. So tip your hats off to the work you did on that bill, because had it not been for us really kind of, slowing things down, we could have had a really detrimental bill that would have been hugely impactful, not just for Frostburg and Cumberland, but I think for a lot of the other municipalities across the state. So we're gonna probably in the next couple of weeks, once we get through all the remaining, bills that need to be signed by the governor and we get through commencement in Annapolis, we'll probably start reconvening conversations again with the sponsors and see if we can't, maybe congregate maybe like a virtual meeting with the members and stakeholders to see where we want to start. But I think where we left off is probably where we'll begin, not from the original intent of the bill. So at least that's a starting point. So more than likely, Frostburg will be at that table again. The same thing, as I mentioned before, there was a bill that was going to change the revolving loan fund that is very important to Cumberland, but also to Frostburg. Originally, that bill that was introduced by Senator Washington, the language in it was not only going to change the title of the program, but it was also going to be reevaluating the structure of how they were going to rate these requests. And if the original intent was going to stay as it was, it would be a negative impact onto Frostburg's standing on receiving those dollars. So I worked with Hayden and Emily, and we developed some very, I think palatable amendments to the bill.
I would say fantastic. If it had passed as written, it would have hurt us. The way we were able to get it written, it now helps us.
Yes. So we were in constant contact with Senator Washington's office, and through, again, those conversations, we were successful in having those amendments adopted to the bill, and it modified it so that it made the benefit for Frostburg had the bill passed. Unfortunately, that bill didn't. I expect maybe next year Senator Washington will bring it back. If she intends to do that, we will be at the table again to make sure that our language remains in the bill and we can help support it. So, those were two major, I think, victories that came out of Frostburg's actions. The work with Mayor Todd on the legislation related to the George Edwards bill. Unfortunately, there were some modifications to the bill. We were expecting to hopefully see some discretionary funds for the governor to continue to invest into the program. Unfortunately, due to, as you probably saw in the budget report, we are broke. So there's really no money to give around or mandate funding, unfortunately, after this next fiscal year. While those modifications or revisions changed the makeup of the board and the eligibility on getting this last round of grant money, I would imagine more than likely in the next few months we'll be talking with my colleague who represents Allegheny County, and we'll be looking at maybe putting together a plan to maybe put in a supplemental bill or a corrective bill, however we want to look at it, so that we can at least try to work with the governor's office and the administration to have some potential availability for discretionary funds for the next, future fiscal years. As you know, the current legislation, the current law allowed for $10 million each fiscal year up until FY26. We're going to be in FY26 starting July 1st. So this last bout of initial money is going to be distributed to Western Maryland. And so our hope is that while the revisions that were done on the bill are laudable, the most important really thing is to make sure that we can still see financial investment coming from the state. And so that will be probably one of the things that I'll be talking with Mayor Todd and you all about in the next few months. I'm sure that'll be part of one of our collective strategies with Allegheny County. In addition to that, as a perfect segue, I think, in the last couple of years representing Cumberland and some of my other clients in Allegheny County along with Frostburg, there had been, a strong push from the delegation to see some uniformity and open communication with all of us to try to find some symmetry on our legislative priorities for, the ongoing years, so that we're not coming in sort of piecemealing, here's what the county wants, here's what the city wants, here's what this group wants, I think given this year, the work that we were able to do with Allegheny County's representatives in Annapolis, I think it really started off on the right foot, and I'm looking forward to taking the philosophy of the delegation and really kind of putting that into action. So, whatever we intend to look at for our legislative priorities for next year, I would like to hopefully see that there could be some alignment with the county so that they support your initiatives, and the same goes for us. Whatever the county is deciding to really push forward, I think we could hopefully all to be on the same page. The stronger we work together collectively, the higher the probability or opportunities there will be to have more dollars coming back to the state, not just operational, but also county capital funds, excuse me. So those are some of the least smaller things that we'll be looking at over the summer. Clearly, I think the biggest elephant in the room right now is, what's happening with the situation with yesterday's floods. There was a press release. I'm not sure if the council, all of you had a chance to see it, but Governor Moore did issue a press statement, I think around midnight this morning. It's on his website, but I did send it to Mayor Todd. I will happily send that out to all of you so you can at least see the actions that the administration has been taking over the last 24 hours, along with just the ongoing, offline communications that we've been seeing. So we'll maintain, obviously those communications and what type of necessary state intervention or resources that need to be done. Please look to me as an active conduit in addition to all of you talking directly to the state officials.
Okay.
As far as the rest of the report goes, and I don't want to hammer everything too home because I've seen a lot of you have the report in front of you. I'm sure you've had a chance to look at it. But in addition to the 3,300 bills we had, I wanted to talk a little bit about where we are, as a snapshot on our state budget. As I said before, we came into this year being very broke. To the point where when we were looking at the projections for out years, we were going to be very, very broke. And I don't say that to be comical. I mean, when you look at the numbers, we were walking into almost $2 billion in a cash deficit going into this coming fiscal year. And if we didn't make changes during the 90 days, we were looking at a $6 billion deficit by 2030. So it was pretty serious. Day after day, in Annapolis, there was nothing that was more time-consuming and more on top of mind than the budget. Every day was something unpredictably changing. Whether the write-downs that came in from the Board of Revenue estimates in March to the changes that were happening in D.C. with the impacts to what was being done with the administration on that level, it was certainly trickling down into the final decisions of the budget. The impacts are substantial, to be very blunt. If you look at the report, I kind of phrase it in a way where the devils are in the details. And while the decisions on what we saw certainly closed the gap on having a balanced budget, as we have to do constitutionally speaking, we were able to mitigate our structural deficit from the billions. Now we're, certainly much in a better posture for the next year, the out year. We're still looking at a deficit, and we still have to make up revenue some way or somehow. What we saw this year was, over $1 billion in new fees and taxes, and we saw just about $2 billion in state cuts. And the report that you have is a very high-level overview of what those cuts look like, along with the impacts on the taxes and fees. And the one thing I would stress, the numbers that you're seeing in terms of the revenue that could be gained from those new fees or increased fees or taxes is just merely a projection. There's nothing guaranteeing you that that decision in this budget is going to cure all. There are talks about a special session later on this year. Could be as early as late September or early October, which falls around the same time when we would be getting the fall Board of Revenue estimates. If our shortfalls are still looking as dim as they were back in March, and if we're not seeing the new impacts with these new revenue decisions, then there's going to be some more cuts potentially coming down the road from the state. So even with the budget allocations for FY26 in place, there's still a lot of volatility that some of those programs in these agencies may be vulnerable for cuts. So we're going to be very closely watching the next few months as to how things play out. There is certainly, the discussion that's still alive. I'm not quite sure if it's going to move if we move into a special session, but the discussion around expanding gaming in Maryland is still top of mind in terms of a way of providing new revenue to the state without taxing our citizens. So if we come back in September, an iGaming or an iLottery might be back on the table as well, in addition to maybe some cuts. So again, we will be watching that very closely. As far as some of the impacts to the county, I did want to just preface a few things that came in very late in the discussions and decisions by the stakeholders and by the administration, which I think are certainly alarming and something that I think all the counties are going to have to really watch out for. And that is some of the cost shifts that took place in the final decisions in the budget bills. Under MSDE and MHEC, they're reducing $97 million in the state's share for annual employer pensions and contributions for members that are part of the teachers' retirement system. There's also going to be a shift from the Department of Assessment and Taxation. It basically is an increase of all local cost shares from 50% to 90%. That each county government, and including Baltimore City, are going to be required to pay the cost for real property valuations, IT, and business property valuations. And then last but not least, the Board of Public Works is also now shifting more responsibility to the locals as pertains to the responsibility of payments owed to any individuals for any new erroneous conviction settlements entered into by BPW. So, when you calculate those cost sharing, shifts, or cost shifts, I should say.
Wait, pause.
Yes.
Back up on that. The locals are going to pay the settlements,
50%.
50% of wrongful conviction settlements that happen in state courts. Jeez. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
There were
But-
certainly some shock. Yes.
wrongfully committed by the local force.
The language, I have to look back at, but it says any new erroneous conviction settlements entered into by BPW, but it says requires that local governments be responsible for 50% of any payments owed to any individual. So I'll have to see if it was because if it was a local arrest or a local decision that was erroneously convicting that person. So I'll double check on that to be
As
specific.
you said, the
but-
devil's in the details.
Devils are in the details, yes, yeah. So when you conflate those cost sharing, impacts to county, along with some of the fees that are tacked into the BRFA bill, the Budget and Reconciliation Act, and the other budget bill, clearly there's going to be a lot more weight on the counties and the municipalities to pick up those costs. And that means decisions on what you're putting on your ratepayers and your constituents. I wish I had more happier news from Minneapolis.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. I'll skip a few things because, again, some of it was more or less just what we've seen over the last couple of years on the state enacting certain taxes and fees to really offset the issues that we're currently having. I think one of the biggest arguments that came out of the budget decisions was, where do we point the blame? I think there was some conjecture where we were placing a tremendous amount of blame on the last 100 days. I think in my opinion, there's some argument that is legitimate. The changes in Washington certainly have had a trickling effect in Maryland. But if you look back at our legislative services reports and even the governor's own testimony, we've had a sluggish economy for many, many years. We haven't seen a positive growth in private investment in Maryland. And let's face it, we are spending a lot of money on entitlements and also on our blueprint for education.
With that, we have an aging population, which also feeds into it.
We do. And so when you kind of bring all that together, it has been a perfect storm for us here in Maryland. There's no crystal ball to see, if the winds will change or how quickly we can get out of this. But for at least temporarily speaking, the new budget and the decisions in there will hopefully stopgap a lot of the bleeding. And only time is really going to tell as to whether or not we can see more investment coming back into the state, or we can raise revenue without it being fees or taxes. I'm really hoping that if we are going to have a special session, that they don't do another bout of fees and taxes, because they've almost kind of exhausted themselves from a lot of the options. Some of the options that they didn't take on was the sugar tax, the gas tax, the sales tax. So, not to say that they are on the menu, if you will, but those are some of the only other remaining, taxes that they haven't increased during session. So if they have to really pull out all stops, they may just dust off some of the things that they said we're not going to do during the session, and might just bring that back again for consideration. As far as any other questions, because I wanted to keep it as high level as possible, and I wanted to give you all an opportunity to ask me any questions about the report.
I glanced over the report. I did not read it word for word, but I did glance over it when you sent it to me. I hope we come up with some money soon, or put the plug back in the drain.
Yeah.
I was wondering, in your pie chart, where the investment for the quantum capital money goes, which of these wedges, it's not really clear to me.
Yeah, so the quantum support that the governor was hailing in his budget platform for the year, I don't think it would be calculated in that pie chart. Are you looking at the pie chart for capital?
Yes.
Capital, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how you would define that in the pie chart, 'cause it's capital and it's economic development.
I guess some of it goes to some of the universities.
Yeah,
It might go under education, but
it would probably find its way into some of the subjects or topics on the pie chart. It wouldn't be its own designated
right, yeah.
slice. So to say which part of the chart it would fall in, it would be kind of nebulous, because I think it kind of shares a little bit of a couple of those topics. Certainly hoping that that investment pays off.
Yeah, 'cause
I know there's a lot of discussion too that this year the governor was wanting to see more investment for quantum, biotech, and cybersecurity. Through the discussions late in Annapolis, there was a service tax bill that was going to basically encapsulate everything almost under the sun in terms of a increase for that service fee. And we had a variety of Chamber of Commerce members and private companies coming down to oppose the bill. And what came out of that bill was sort of a mutated service tax on IT. It's cloud services, AWS, any type of like IT management type of services. So while it's infecting, or I should say impacting, IT companies, everyone uses those services, right down from municipalities to small businesses. So while it's a niche on who it's hitting, it really is, when you look at it, hitting everyone. The way the IT tax was drafted, it's been very ambiguous to see what type of impacts it will be for all of us. We are waiting to get word back from the Comptroller's office as to how they are going to regulate and define and shape how that service tax will be applied and who's going to be impacted by it. So my recent conversation with the Chamber of Commerce on Monday was that they are still having conversations, discussions with the Comptroller's office, and
My hope is that maybe we have some additional details to share with everyone by next month before the fiscal year starts and when that new fee would begin.
That's the digital products and services tax.
Yeah, so if there was a section in your report talking about taxes and fees, I believe, and there's a section where I mention impacts on IT services. It's called data/IT consulting service tax. So from what we've learned, the tax will not include accounting or payroll, office support, employment services, but there will be a potential that this new tax will be on all consumers that are using cloud storage devices like Google Drives. I'm not sure if you all use Google or not, but that could very well impact Frostburg and municipality. There's also a discussion that this new IT service tax could include video and audio streaming services, such as like YouTube, and there's also web hosting and web management services that are also potentially targets under the veil of this IT tax. Again, all of these are things that we use in our day-to-day business and operations. So hopefully we'll have some additional clarity from the comptroller's office as to what directly will be impacted. Because then, once we know, I'm sure there's going to have to be some adjustments that you all will have to be looking at. I don't know if there's any exemptions to, at this point in time, local county governments at this point.
You say it's the original rate of 2.5% from, what's original about it?
So, yeah, so originally, as I said, the bill came in as a service tax. And the bill would basically put in place a 2.5% service tax on IT and other services like landscaping, things like that, lobbying services. When we had those two hearings, the outrage from the private sector companies saying we can't have this will destroy us or cripple us or we'll leave the state. They held off on moving forward with that bill, but they meaning the legislature decided, well, we're not going to pass this bill in its current form. We'll dilute it down and we'll take a portion of the bill and we'll include that into the final budget bill. And that portion is the IT tax.
Okay,
So
it's not on
instead
the
of,
other services, but it's on the IT services.
correct, correct. Like I said, the problem is with that is nowadays everyone uses all of those services, right down to a small business owner to, you all. So it's not just going to be impacting a company per se, like a Google or an Amazon Web Services. This is going to be involving all of us. Which is unfortunate because, again, as I said before, the governor's been wanting to push for investment and encouragement of those types of companies and industry coming to Maryland.
Yeah.
When you tack on, something like this, it makes it that much more tumultuous to entice those companies to come here.
It's, they're between a rock and a hard place because they're trying to close that budget gap and without hurting people and
Yeah.
and then people who do have the money say, well, if you do it to us, we're just going to leave the state. We have the wherewithal to leave the state, and so
Right.
they can hold that over them. And it's like, what do you do?
Right. Yeah, there were a lot of debates, heated debates on the budget. The budget came down to the very much like the last few days of session before it passed. The capital budget didn't pass until the last day of session. There was a lot of debate as to philosophically, depending on which aisle, how do we make these cuts, or how can we balance our budget? What can we do that's not going to be a draconian impact, for folks that need services, or for our day-to-day taxpayers that are going to be the ones bearing the brunt on it. So we're in a state where Maryland or the legislature looks at, we want to invest in our hospitals, we want to invest in certain social programs, we want to make sure Medicaid is protected, we want to make sure that our public education institutions are getting invested in, and unless you're making some changes to that, then everything else is on the consideration for being impacted. So there's going to still be a lot more harder conversations ahead of us in Annapolis, much more than what we saw this year. And they're going into an election year, so
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
that doesn't
you
help.
add that into it makes it even more difficult.
Yeah. I don't envy them.
But other than all that, the play was very good.
Again, I think looking at, you know, some of this budget stuff we weren't going to be able to control.
Yeah.
But some of the things that we saw coming out of the General Assembly, we were able to get involved in, and we did a fantastic job. You know, the bills that we didn't want to see pass, didn't pass through our support and our efforts. The bills that we wanted to see, you know, move forward, we were part of that conversation and they passed. The MML priorities, you know, they got 50% of those through. That amusement service tax did not go anywhere.
Good.
But again, we'll see if the locals need to raise revenue because all these new obligations and cost shifts. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see some type of incarnation with that again.
Yeah.
I think parts of Northern Virginia are right now debating adding a 4% food tax on all pre-made foods, whether they're in a restaurant or a grocery store. They were just talking about that like 2 days ago, and it kind of reminded me of the tax that MML was looking to put in, which were, you know, an added little additional, you know, fee to help augment, you know, more revenue. I didn't get any indication from MML at this point whether or not they're bringing that back yet, but we'll find out later on this year.
Okay. All right. Anything for Rich? We appreciate
Thank
you.
you. My pleasure. Thank you. Sorry I
A lot of
can't
information.
have better news.
No, we understand.
But again, for the efforts that you all came into, and when I asked you for help, you were available, and that resource was very well received and had a lot of persuasion in Annapolis. So kudos to Hayden and Lydia, and obviously you all and Mayor Todd. It was nice to have a presence of seeing Frostburg in Annapolis this year at pace as well, and you know, the more we can kind of see that in Annapolis, the more visibility of Frostburg. It's just going to continue to help support whatever needs that we have, because they remember that. So, is there anything that you need me to bring back to Annapolis in light of the last 24 hours up here, besides the conversations? And I will talk to Dylan.
Sure, that's fine. As far as the city proper and what we do, I believe we're okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Just,
Okay.
just
We're in a position to help the other
yes.
Okay.
communities, so we've been, there are a lot of spots where we're gathering donations to take
Okay.
it down, so, and monetary donations as well. Frostburg First is coordinating that, so.
Is there any like website, or is there anything on the homepage that I can share with Dylan to say that beyond just some of the local support, that if there any state support wants to come in from other jurisdictions to help out parts of Allegheny County? Do we have
Well,
anything in
we can get something on the website. I mean, we've been mostly just using social media
that? Okay.
throughout the day, but
Frostburg First does have a resource page on their
And
website.
they're trying to like,
They're
just
putting
gather
everything that they,
on there to be like a central location for all
Okay.
that stuff.
yeah.
And I think
So-
also the emergency management agencies trying to, especially like on the emergency need type.
Okay.
Chamber of Commerce did as well.
Okay.
So we can share that with you.
That'd be great,
Yeah.
because I'm sure Dylan
Yeah.
and team would like to know if there's any other resources that they can disseminate out to their you know, cast of folks. So yeah, if you can share with me, that'd be great.
Bill?
That's all I have.
Yeah, okay, thank you. You're certainly welcome to stay. You're not obligated to, but you're certainly welcome to stay, and then we can
I would
get
love
some
to.
drinks or something.
I would actually love to, but I'm actually due to make a few calls back to the governor's office. And
Nope, this is probably no school tomorrow.
All Allegheny County public schools will be closed tomorrow, May 15th.
There you go.
I would stay, but unfortunately I've got some other buzzing now.
Okay,
Let me get going.
No
and I'll
problem.
report back.
Safe travel.
no
Thank
problem.
you.
All right. So, let's see, moving on then, item 4 on the agenda, item 4, meeting topics 4A. This is second reading of all of the ordinances. Thanks again, Rich, we appreciate it. Second reading of the 3 ordinances, so just,
The only thing I wanted to point out was the implementation timeline for Servline, which is ordinance 2025-02. Nothing will change in the ordinance, but Servline did not get us the insert that we wanted to send out with the May utility bills in time. So in conversation with them, we will delay implementation until August 1st instead of July 1st for the program beginning. And that's the assumption that they get us an appropriate flyer in time to mail out with the June bills. And again, it does not affect the ordinance because the ordinance is written in such a way that the city's leak adjustment policy would remain in effect for anyone who does not have that third-party option. So we'll just move
Got it.
forward as is.
got it. Okay. The other 2 will remain the same, the budget and the tax credit.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
Just be the second reading.
okay. Item B then is the RFP for the new auditor.
So the city received one response to the request for proposals, and that was from SB and Company. They submitted a technical proposal and a cost proposal. Lydia has attached the cost proposal as part of your agenda documents. So the total all-inclusive price for the first year, which would be the fiscal year that ends June 30, 2025, is $45,350. The city is reaching out to their references that they provided in their proposal, but the communication that I've had from other entities using their services has been very positive. So this is a surprise to me as far as the price.
I was gonna say that's significantly different.
And in reading their proposal, obviously, they have resources available to them because they're doing so many audits. They do reference the use of AI as far as analytics, and there's a number of software tools that they have that will affect their sampling. But in reading through their technical proposal, no items of concern, came to my attention. So my recommendation would be that the mayor and council move forward with entering into an agreement with them for auditing services for the next 3 years.
Okay. Okay. What was the cost of the last audit that we just did? I know it was significantly different. I just want you to say
It
it
was
out loud.
around 73,000.
That's what I thought. Sounds good. Maybe we can lock that in on like a 20-year deal.
Yeah, sound like contract. Bigger company, more resources.
Yeah. All right. Item C then is the commercial tax credit.
All right, good evening, everyone. This is a pretty brief one. So the city currently has a commercial tax credit that is offered to, for eligible rehabilitation projects. However, the language of the existing ordinance kind of implies that the Director of Finance and the Community Development Director are the ones who actually authorize the tax credit. We did not feel comfortable with that, so we asked Michael Cohen to prepare this ordinance that makes it very clear that all tax credit authorizations must be approved by the mayor and city council before anything moves forward. So, like I said, it's a pretty basic one, but we just wanted to make sure that it was explicit that the mayor and council have final authority on that.
Okay. And this is just the first reading on this new ordinance, right? So it'll go to June too.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else on that? This meeting's not going to be so long after all.
Well, we haven't gotten into the next item yet.
The rental housing ordinance.
Yes. Lydia, if you could try to just scroll with me. I'm not sure
Okay.
if you all have copies of this in front of you.
Just the mayor.
Okay, so, I'd like to go over this is our first reading of the proposed amendments to the rental housing ordinance. So I'm just gonna flip through them kind of line by line, but quickly. So section 1.01 through 1.06, the intent of the language has not changed. It's just been updated and simplified to reflect the modern day. The previous version was pretty lengthy and unnecessarily so this just simplifies the language. Moving into the definitions portion, we did add a definition for digital platform, since we now are going to be processing rental housing licenses through a digital platform. We also amended the definition of immediate family, and this will come into play here in a little bit. So, but it includes natural and adopted children, and it also includes grandparents as immediate family. The definition of inspector was updated. Previously, there was a very lengthy definition referring to third-party inspectors. This just refers to section 2.02, where the duties of the inspector are defined. In the definition of owner, there was a clause at the end that was added that starting until legal title to a property subject to a land installment contract, rent to own, etc. That was added because we've been seeing an uptick in rent to own situations here in town, and we wanted to make clear who is responsible in those cases. So we just wanted to make sure that our ordinance addressed that, because it did not make any mention whatsoever of those kinds of arrangements previously. In the definition of owner's agents, the last sentence beginning, this ordinance does not empower an owner's agent to perform any acts which are not specifically set forth. That's just added on to the existing definition. The definition for previously existing nonconformity was simplified. It used to be like a 2-paragraph definition. Now I think it's 1 sentence. So, and it still says all the same things. The definition of registration, we added the word complete rental application, because we do receive a lot of incomplete ones. And we also mentioned the fee that must be paid. So that's that. And finally, another notable definition that was added is vacant unit. So we've split this out into temporarily vacant and permanently vacant. These definitions, for the time being, are not going to come into play, but if the mayor and council do at some point in the future decide to develop a vacant property registry, these definitions will be important. So we just wanted to go ahead and get those in there ahead of time, since we're looking at possibly exploring that rental housing, or excuse me, vacant property registry, probably in the next fiscal year. So that just gets us ahead of the curve on that portion. All right, moving into section 2. The bulk of these amendments here really just is about moving that inspector position from third party to in-house. So I would like to note that all of this language is written in such a way that if the mayor and council at any point in time decides to go with a third party inspection company, we don't have to do any text amendments. It's all baked in. You have the option to either have an on-staff inspector or a third party, and we can move in whatever direction the council pleases. Moving through this, it's just a lot of simplified language. It removes the requirement that the inspector carry independent insurance, because, you know, if it's a city employee, it would be covered under the city's insurance policy. If you decide to bring that or take that position to third party, we may have to look at that again. again, a lot of this is language cleanup, splitting the duties out between the rental housing officer, or also known as the rental housing program coordinator, and the rental housing inspector.
Couldn't you put in just something in there that if a third party is hired to do this, that they are required to have insurance
Yeah.
instead of having to worry about it later?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah,
can
I think that's best.
ask my.
While we're at it, I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that was I didn't catch that on my first review, but I will certainly ask Michael to incorporate that. So now we're down into owner and tenant responsibilities. This is section 2.06. And then on subsection B, tenants must support owners' efforts. Previously, the language said tenants are encouraged to. So this puts more of a responsibility on the tenants to protect the owner's property. And then at the very end of the section, a sentence was added that says this subsection shall not be interpreted to limit the owner's responsibility, but it also adds responsibility to the tenant for issues that they may be causing. 2.07, in regard to parking requirements, the previous version of this listed out basically a duplication of section 6 of the Frostburg zoning ordinance. So we just simplified all of that down and just refer to section 6 of the zoning ordinance, which is all about parking. Just moving through here, now into section 3 in regard to rental registration. Again, just simplifying a lot of the language, specifying that the Community Development Department is responsible for this. It does specify now that we will be requiring owners to report their unit labels on their rental housing forms. That's something that has been a consistent issue with the Postal Service. Like if you put Unit 1 instead of Unit A, a lot of times they'll return it. And that has caused a lot of issues. So we are now requiring that. We're also now requiring a disclosure of whether units are occupied, temporarily vacant, or permanently vacant. And I think that the under oath signature is already on the form, but it wasn't written in the code. So we just wanted to make that crystal clear in the code that that's what's expected. Moving on to section 3.03. This is a very slight change. So rental units are still required to be inspected every 3 years, which has always been the case. Units can also be inspected upon tenant complaint. Again, always the case. But we did add in this upon the transfer of a property that includes a rental unit, or if there's a change in occupancy. So let's say a third unit is added to a duplex. Then we would need to go in and inspect that new dwelling unit. Along the same lines, if a duplex is consolidated into a single family home, we would reserve the right to go in and inspect that. And then the inspection scheduling is going to, this is one of the more significant changes that we've made here. So the current process, the way it works, we work in 6-month cycles, and we'll send out a notice about 30 days before the cycle begins. So the cycles run January 1 through June 30th and July 1 through December 31st. So right now they get a notice 30 days before, let's say, the January 1st date. They would have a full 180 days to schedule that. A lot of times, and the feedback that we've heard is that people will wait till like the last 7 days to get their inspections done, and our inspectors are getting overloaded. So what we're asking of folks, we are going to kind of break that up. The cycles will still exist, but we're going to kind of send out the notices in waves. So you'll still get your notice 30 days before, but it must take place within 90 days of the notice rather than a full 6 months.
Okay.
6 months. So we're basically splitting the 6 cycles in half to allow for a more manageable workload. We also, we understand that things happen, and so we've allowed for two 30-day extensions. It would have to be good, for good reason, you know. You can't say, well, I have a paper cut and I don't want to show up. So that's not a good reason. But it allows for those 2 30-day extensions. And so that's that significant change there.
Excuse me.
And then as we continue to move through, it's really just, again, cleaning up language. And nothing about the fees are, well, besides the one fee that is being approved or being discussed next week on second reading. Property standards remain the same. And finally, section 5 relating to violations and penalties. There was a huge section that talked about violations and penalties, and also a very big section about the right of appeal, which we removed the right of appeal section because that is addressed at length in the IPMC, in the city code, and in the zoning ordinance. So we figured we'll just refer people to those sections rather than just continuously repeating the same information. So those are the changes to the rental housing ordinance. I'm happy to answer any questions or go into more detail on some of these items. But as I've said, it's been a lot of just cleaned up language, simplified language, and referring to sections where things are already discussed.
Page 8, subsection K, there's something missing.
Yes, so I believe I did make a note of that.
Okay.
K, L, and I guess J, they appear to all be the same clause, but for some reason split into 3 incomplete sentences. So I think that may have just been a minor error on the city attorney's part. But I'm going to ask him to clean that up. I am assuming that letter K means complaint shall be made in writing and submitted to the Community Development Department. That's already something that we do. And then I also assume that this L, complaints alleging or inquiries alleging violations of minimum property standards, I assume that the end of that sentence would also say shall be made in writing to Community Development Department. And about the part of section L that is kind of mid-sentence, but it goes, in which case an inspection will be undertaken using the standard process for routine inspections. I assume that would be the natural continuation of the clause. I am going to ask Michael to clean that up, though.
All right. Good on that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right, so that'll be adjusted by next Tuesday by Michael, and we'll get that good. Okay, next is item E, Maryland Department of Planning report.
Yes. So every year, the Community Development Department submits this report to the Maryland Department of Planning, in which we report new residential permits issued, and then also it gives our Planning Commission the opportunity to talk about additional resources that may be desired, and kind of issues or planning topics that are relevant during the calendar year. So this is for calendar year 2024. During that year, we issued 8 new residential permits. We did note the temporary water service to Lonaconing as part of a, we called it a growth-related change. But I know that doesn't quite fit there, but we felt that it was important to
Political
disclose
of
that.
you.
And the planning topics that the Planning Commission had requested that we report here was water and sewer capacity, again going along the lines of what we just discussed, revitalization and infill, bike and pedestrian planning, and commercial redevelopment. So,
We're good.
and we are required to have the mayor and council approve this before we can formally submit, so.
Very good. We can do that. Item F, reappointment to the Historic Commission.
Yes. Maureen Brewer has served on our Historic District Commission for many years and has indicated a desire to renew her appointment for one more 3-year term. Based on what she said, this may be her last, but we would welcome her for another term if the council is agreeable.
Is there any reason we shouldn't be?
No, sir.
Okay.
She has served faithfully and always gives thoughtful feedback.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Good with that. Next item is item G, temporary repeal of the the open container law. I assume this would be Lieutenant Seitz.
Sure, we have no objections. It's gone favorably in the past. Hopefully if we have any issues, great citizens will step up, and if not, we'll be around to take care of business if chaos should arise.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Next, item H, this is the potential demolition agreement at the Nickel Building.
Yep. So Todd and I sat down with the owners of the Nickel Building, Larry and Megan Guthrie, and we basically spent an hour proposing terms for this agreement. They are of the mindset that they agree the building needs to come down. Just like we are, they are on board with going with our loan payment program. The draft agreement is in their court now. We had Michael Cohen do a draft agreement that enumerated all the things we wanted. Our interest rate, the amount of the loan, the collateral for the loan, the terms if they stop paying on it, the terms if they do pay in good faith. There is a $40,000 forgivable amount after basically 11 years of good faith payments. They did agree to subdivide the property and give us the front, basically 12 feet of it to do a parklet that we would own, which opens up the possibilities to pursue some POS funding to kind of do what we want with it. And then that also opens up the door to Larry and Megan having options behind the wall in terms of parking, potential retail space, whatever they might pursue. Some of the important details are the low bid that we got for demolition was $114,000. That is from Brierside Construction. They are going to do the top floor by hand so that we don't have a piece of equipment blowing stuff on the main street. Then what we expect landfill and incidentals to cost is really hard to pin down, but we kind of came to a $29,000 conclusion. So what we proposed for the entirety of the loan is $143,000 at 4.75% interest. That is just about equal, a little bit higher than the interest we've been getting on our money market account. So we are not losing money, and with rates potentially fluctuating, we shouldn't gain or lose money on the deal. We're not trying to take advantage of them. It is a 15-year loan. It is a commercial loan. In the instance that we don't incur $29,000 worth of costs, then there are terms in the agreement that say you are not on the hook for the full $143,000. It's addressed in their payment plan. First floor hand demo, second and bottom floors will be obviously machine demo, and the really great part is in Briarside's demolition cost. They agreed to do all of the trucking to the landfill at their cost. So
Really?
yeah, we're not on the hook for it. That was why we wanted to opt for them. I do have 3 paper quotes. We did go through the full process. And they are the low quote as well. They are local. They're based out of LaVale. We haven't done a ton of work for them, but they're about a 5-year-old company, but they do a lot of big work. Am I missing any other big details? I don't, maybe talk about once it's on the ground, what
Yeah.
the aftermath.
So, just to get it down on the ground immediately, obviously our goal is July 4th, to have everything on the ground and down. We're just going to do a temporary screening in the immediacy. So it'll basically just be a 6.5 foot high wooden fence just to screen it, so it doesn't look like a vacant lot for the next year. But then once it is on the ground and down, we are going to fill in the entirety of the basement. We're going to fill in all the low spots back there, leave the suitable fill, truck out the stuff that has to go to the landfill, and then in the hopes that once we get everything down, the dust is settled, we'll start pushing back to get our property, do the long-term masonry aesthetic wall that Bethany's hopeful we can get some POS funding for, in conjunction with, or not POS funding, my apologies, some pockets of grant funding. To do that with a historically conscious wall there to screen, which we can partner with a contractor of our choice with to do. And then long-term, Todd and I talked about with Larry and Megan doing some potential agreements for a parking lot back there, if that is the way they opt, that in the instance that they want to do that, that they would basically promise us or sign on to agree that we would get some handicap parking spots and some Main Street public parking spots. They're not 100% set that they want to do a parking spot, but that was the first thing that they were thinking of.
How far back from the wall to the back is there?
Oh,
It's a pretty deep lot.
it's a
Yeah.
pretty deep lot, and they also, so the alley that comes behind that, they also own the left side, the other side of the alley.
Probably 200 feet, if I was guessing.
I would buy that, yeah.
It's a
I
big
would agree
chunk.
with that.
And we're getting the front, 12 feet or so?
Just
Yeah.
about. We haven't 100% decided on 12 versus 14,
Right.
but just enough that we can put some benches out front and some plantings, and I would leave that up to Bethany.
And they won't have any access from the front, right?
Not from the
Just a pedestrian access.
Just a, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No
No vehicular access,
Right.
no. So
Yeah.
if they, years from now, next year, 2 years from now, if they decide to go with parking, the access would be from the rear.
Okay.
And then we had talked about sort of in the ether, because they don't even know what they're gonna do. First of all, once the building's on the ground, they're gonna truck everything out. Breyer's gonna truck everything out, fill it in so that it's flat. It'll sit there for a while, I'm sure, because I'm sure they don't have money for blacktop and whatever else they need yet. But
you also need time for settling or not?
probably.
Yeah. If they were going to do a parking lot, you'd have to come back anyways. But
So, in the future, for example, if we're doing CSO and we've got blacktop left over from something, we could dump it there as we need it. But on the condition that if we do that, we would have access to put at least some handicap spots in there, have partial access to the parking lot.
Yep.
If they don't want us to have access to it, that's fine, but then we're not gonna give them the extra blacktop and whatever else.
I spoke with the Historic District on Monday, and they're obviously saddened by losing the building, but I was very clear with them that it's not in a safe state to leave up, so it's coming down, and they accepted it. They would just really like to see some kind of homage paid to the building itself, whether we do a plaque out front. Oh, yeah. I figured I should have known you'd be honest. Yeah, they want us to be certain that we pay some kind of homage to the building, which will get handled. Other than that, I didn't touch on it too much with them. They didn't particularly love the idea of a parking lot, but I said, at this point, we're just interested in getting the building down. We can cross that bridge with them later. So
Yeah, I mean, it's whatever they decide to do with it's fine. But.
Yep. That's the long and the short of it.
Nick Durst said that they started in that building. I didn't realize
Wow.
it was the Durst family that,
Oh.
they had their
Was that
start, yeah, back there.
I'm anxious for it to come down. But unless there's any questions, that's about all I have for it.
So they have the contract, right?
Yep.
And they know that we want to approve this next week?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so I guess on that, item I is related to that.
Yep, so emergency procurement. Basically, for me to go through our full procurement process to procure the demolition, we didn't think we were going to have time to make it by July 4th. I mean, we would not have had time to make it by July 4th. So I did everything I could to get 3 quotes. I have 3 paper quotes. It's just and it's over our $25,000 procurement threshold. I mean, obviously it's $114,000, but we would have to basically allow for emergency procurement in this instance. So we still got 3 quotes. We just didn't do 3 separate sealed bids and the full, in the newspaper and on the website and EMMA for the sake of time. So as long as everybody's okay with that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Did we forget anything on that?
Interest rate, amount, loan term, collateral, plan for the future.
Just to elaborate a little bit on the payment thing, I know I talked to Commissioner Carter about this, I don't know who else was in the room. There's an option in the contract that as long as payments are made in good faith and continue to be made on time and all the term, that they keep their end of the deal, that when the principal amount of the loan gets down to $40,000, which is what they paid for the lot, mayor and council have the option to forgive the principal balance.
At that time.
Right, whenever that happens, 7, 8 years from now, whatever.
That was one of their concessions that they
Asks,
wanted.
that's one, yeah. All right, anything else on that? Okay, general discussion items, parking at Glendenning.
Do you want to take the lead on this one, or do you want me?
What did you talk about at the rec commission?
I was really surprised how the rec commission was a lot, they were ready to lower the hammer.
Yeah, yeah.
I think in part because Brian had produced the email, that, I don't know if y'all want to know the background to all this, so.
This is the parking up
Yeah,
there
for the Cougars.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember this.
Yeah.
Because he planted trees in half, or they're going to plant
They're,
trees
the
in half
Chestnut
the field.
Society is,
Yeah.
but it's not just that, it's because they didn't grant permission to have parking on there to
Right,
begin with.
right.
So the city had entered into an agreement with Borden to rent that land from them, and we would split the cost with the Cougar Football
Yeah.
Association. And we had gotten an agreement from their coach that, where it's kind of coming out of the blue for us. We hadn't planned on it for this year, but, what are you gonna do? So, okay. Well, we haven't gotten paid for it. And that was in 2023. So that's 2023, 2024 that we haven't gotten paid, and 2025 this year. There's a new board now, and when Elaine sent them a notice saying, hey, you're behind on these payments, the board said, we didn't know anything about this. But there is this email exchange with the coach. So the rec commission folks said, actually there's an email from Brian about this. I think he sent it to everybody, right?
Yeah.
So let me refresh my memory on this. Sorry. Okay, this is their recognition. That's agreement.
It's basically along the lines of that the Cougars should have to come up with $1,500 a year.
25.
25.
Yeah,
Well, it's but because they were kind of blindsided the first year and they hadn't saved up to pay, that for the first year, it would only be $1,500?
Yeah, 1,500 for 4 years, and then the last 2 years they'd have to do 25 to 25.
Yeah, that's what it was. We had talked originally about, maybe forgiving the first year or something like that, but they were not in a forgiving mood. Also because they brought up some other things from the past that I hadn't been privy to. So they didn't totally trust everything that was said. The other thing that they talked about was how to enforce this. What do we do if they don't pay it? And I guess the only real, but without punishing the kids.
Right.
And the only kind of leverage that we had was we owned the concession building, and we could lock it up and say, you can't use it. And concessions is the way they make their money,
So
other than the registration fees.
let me just brain dump for a minute.
They'll sell out of coolers.
Yeah,
and-
they'll
and
still
flat
do
tops.
it.
Yeah.
I'm
So
telling you,
Hayden and the Public Works guys and Lydia and everybody, we're gonna get out of the contract with Borden.
Yeah,
I
it'll
already-
be
I
just the
already
3
have
years,
that.
yeah.
I
So
already
we're gonna get out of the contract with Borden. We're still
It
on
had
the
been a
hook for
5-year
the,
contract.
we're still on the hook for the 3 years that they used it, but the last 2, we're gonna get out of it. Now, we haven't paid Borden any money yet either, as far as I know.
First 3 years are paid.
Oh, we have paid
Yes.
them, okay.
Last 2 years are not.
So we don't have to pay the last 2 years, but we've already paid the 3. Hayden and the Parks guys and the Public Works guys are gonna look at expanding the parking that's up there, sort of behind the scoreboard and down the other end, using all those millings that are piled up out there and expanding that parking. Now, it's not gonna be quite as much space, but it'll be
It'll be enough.
So,
And there are ways that you can park the cars that will fit a lot more in than they've been doing presently, because they're kind of parking
just
willy-nilly.
haphazardly.
Yeah.
So my thought on this is, there is no legal signed agreement that says they agreed to pay it. There's an email that acknowledges, yeah, they should, but you know, everybody that has kids knows, all these pee-wee leagues and whatever, the people that run them turn over constantly. When you're in it, your kids are in it, you run it. When your kids are gone, okay, bye. So,
So the agreement will be with the organization and not with a person.
but my thought is, even though there is an email that confirms this, it's possible that some of them may not have been told about it, or that
I would agree.
it's possible some of them may not have been told about it, or the people that agreed to it left, you know, as their kids matriculated through. At any rate, I don't think we're going to come out of this looking good if we're going to pick a fight with the Pee Wee football team.
Yeah.
Should they contribute to it? Yes, and that's my plan, is to call Randy and say, listen, can you throw some money towards this? Because it's clear that you agreed to it, even though we legally can't enforce it.
And
It's
our-
clear.
The parking work we're gonna have to do up there is not gonna be free either. We're gonna have to, we'll do it all in-house, and most of it will be free, but we will have to buy some things in the neighborhood of $1,500. So,
Plus, I mean, they get the use of the field, they get the use of the concession stand, they have those huge goalposts that they don't need, that they insisted on. We've given them a lot.
to their defense though, there's more kids in the Cougars than there are our other Little League sports combined.
Mhm.
So, that's,
Yeah.
that's just stating facts.
Mhm.
I'm not picking one side or the other, I'm just,
Yeah.
I was there when Hayden was
yeah.
playing.
I mean, and I get that they're the only people that use that field, but that's not by any kind of requirement. I mean, it's a football field, and they're the only football organization that we have. But that's not to say that, like,
Then they
if-
wanted to park on the soccer field.
yeah, that's not good.
That's not gonna happen, no.
But I mean, it is a public park. Even though they're the only ones that use that particular field, it is a public park. It is technically open to everybody.
Go up and try to use it.
Well, yeah.
And I'm just gonna say from experience, when my kids were in Little League soccer, yeah, go up and try to use that field.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, what do we think?
Do you wanna go with the rec commission's recommendation or not?
Not really.
No, what we say, we just eat these 3 years
I mean,
and then
I
I think
don't
we
think
can.
we should eat
bow
all
out.
3 years.
I think we can go to Randy and go to the organization and say, listen, I mean, I think we can try and reason with them. You obviously knew about this. We are going to expand the parking. We're gonna forget about the mine thing. We're gonna expand the new parking. Can you help us with this? Since we've floated this out there for 3 years, I mean, I think we can try and be reasonable with them. Maybe that's me being naive, but I think that we can.
how much parking is that gonna add?
About what they're losing. Yeah. Maybe a couple less, but about what they're losing. Yeah. It's pretty big back there. It's just, it's super, super wet. So the bulk of the work we're gonna have to do is in drainage. So, getting some perforated pipe and some stone.
Is that a hillside there?
But once
It's
they
pretty-
move
it's
those,
pretty-
Is that
Flat. It is
when
on
you
a
go
hill,
past the
but
concession stand and come around the backside?
Yeah,
Is that
behind
what
the
you're talking-
scoreboard.
Yeah, okay.
Alright.
once they move those cuttings out of there, there'll be a lot more room down below.
Yeah,
That will all be
it's just-
flat down there too.
Just bear in mind, that's not our property. There's a reason we gotta get those buildings out there. But yes, so the new parking area will work in theory. It's just gonna take a little bit of work to get there. My proposal would be a approach them and say, hey, we're gonna, for this to work, which we stuck our neck out, made this deal, and we stuck our neck back out and canceled the deal, and then we're gonna do it again and help you with this new parking agreement. Could we hit them up for the costs of the?
That's
new
what I was
parking?
thinking. If you can get something on paper that says this is what it's gonna cost us to expand the new parking back there, can you guys pay for that? And then we'll call it even.
How much would that be, you think?
On the low end, if we did all the labor and we just bought materials, $1,500. If we didn't do the labor and if we paid for materials and like a Paul McKenzie or a B&M or a Davy Winter, $3,500.
So they're still getting
Yeah.
a deal.
If we, maybe we'll do that. We'll say, listen, we're gonna expand this for you because we got out of the agreement for you. If you pay for that, we'll call it even.
I'll get something in writing then.
And then we have to make sure they sign something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
So are they gonna need that, you know, the other one in the future year coming up?
So
or
this
what?
coming year, we're already paid up, so they might as well use it this year.
So if they want it after that, it's up to them to do it. Is that what we're saying? I mean, if they want that,
If
They do not want to rent it.
they
Yeah,
do
they
not
do
want
not
to,
want
they
it.
do not want
Yeah,
to
they
rent
don't
it, okay.
their whole mindset is that it's too hard to, it's too much of a burden to absorb $2,500 a year, or even if it's not a burden, if they can afford it, it's $2,500 they're taking out of the pocket of the kids, in essence. So that's their pushback.
Start charging the parents to park.
There was a lot of money in that account, I remember when, you know, we were back in.
Well, they make a lot of money from concessions. Do they
Oh,
pay for the
yeah.
kids like uniforms or helmets or everything?
They're, I think kids pay for their helmets, but I think everything else gets paid for.
The old days where you just went in and found one that fit and brought it out. Or fit good enough.
Yeah, they've been painted 15 times.
Well, I'm sure it was a big difference, you know, moving from the dog park up.
Oh my God, yeah.
That's where it was at originally, yeah.
It's probably pretty wet.
Oh, yeah.
And two, like I said, I was obviously a member of the Cougars. I coach Pee Wee football in the area. I help with the high school and middle school, so I'm trying to put biases aside. But they have just as many young female athletes that are part of the organization as they do male football players. It's not just football. They have just as many cheerleaders.
Oh, yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of kids involved and there's,
Oh, yeah.
So I just wanted to add, you guys passed a resolution to enter into that agreement, so you will need to do another to get out of the agreement and the consensus.
to get out of the agreement with Borden.
With Borden.
Yes.
Okay. Are we, is that what we want to do? And the agreement with Borden?
Yeah, we're gonna end the agreement with Borden. I think we're all in agreement about that. We can't pass a resolution until we get stuff
Right.
squared away with
Right.
the,
got it. I can make that happen.
Yeah, so we'll get in touch with Randy and see if we can resolve that.
Sounds good to me.
All right, anything else on that? Employee benefits update. That's Elaine.
So the city has been working with CBIZ this year, as far as brokering our benefits for employees. So that would involve our health insurance, dental, vision, life, accidental death and dismemberment. And they have put together a proposal for the city's consideration. And we don't usually need the approval of the mayor and council on these kinds of things. The city administration authorizes the agreements, but we just wanted to bring it to you as a matter of information. So the city's current health insurance plan has been a self-insured plan. This has been the first year we've done that. The provider is Aetna, our TPA is WellNet, and Roundstone held stop-loss coverage. So the recommendation from CBIZ is that we go back to Cigna, offering two different health insurance plans for employees. One would be very similar to what we have now as far as lower deductible, higher premium. The individual contribution per employee that the employer would put towards the monthly premium would be 75%. So the employees would be picking up 25%. The second plan would be a high deductible plan, and the maximum out-of-pocket cost total would be the same, but it would bring the contribution required to the employees way down. And in this scenario, they're recommending that the employer contribution be 85% of the premium for employees. So this plan structure is an overall cost savings to the city. This would be a level funding plan, meaning the city could get 50% of the surplus returned at the end of the plan year. It does require a bridge contract because there will be payouts of existing claims, that we're leaving with Aetna. But overall, it seems like a very favorable recommendation for the city and overall cost savings. The city currently has vision and dental plans with Cigna. The recommendation is to move to Humana for both of those coverages. The life and accidental death coverages right now we have with Lincoln, and their recommendations, we move that to Mutual of Omaha. So Hayden and Lydia and I have been in meetings with CBIZ. We feel comfortable with their recommendations. They would have an online enrollment mechanism, which should be administratively much easier to manage. And they would handle open enrollment meetings with the employees, and that would begin May 27th, and the open enrollment period would run for 2 weeks. So I wanted to provide that to you, and if you had any questions, but that would be our general recommendation, to go with what CBIZ has researched and recommended to us. The other item that has come up is in the process of filling out this paperwork for entry into these new plans. The city currently does not have a service requirement for retirees to remain on the city's health insurance plan. The only requirement is that the employee be at least age 60 when they retire, and then they would be eligible to stay on the city's insurance at the same contribution rate as employees until they're eligible for Medicare. This creates a significant liability potentially for the city, because someone could say, come on as an employee at age 58, leave at 60, and then the city's responsible for insurance until Medicare. Most other organizations do have a service requirement. Stated as a number of years. I've seen 10 years for most of the ones I've looked at. And normally this would be included in the personnel policy, and the city has been through a lengthy process of trying to get an updated personnel policy that hasn't completely gotten taken care of. So in lieu of the personnel policy not being available in its completion, I was interested as to the council's consideration of whether they would like to make this a separate resolution to establish a service retirement for retirees to continue to have that insurance benefit.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think for a lot of public sector organizations, I think 10 is pretty standard. I mean, maybe at the federal level it might be 5, but I think 10 is pretty standard.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. There's time to put that in as a resolution.
Yeah, my recommendation, I was thinking 7, but that was just kind of splitting the difference between what I've seen between federal and state and private. It might discourage someone who maybe is a little bit older and might plan to retire from here from applying to, some of those higher level jobs as they open up, but I can certainly put a resolution together for next week.
10? I'm fine with 10. 10 it is?
All right.
Okay.
All right, we'll move forward then with CBIZ and get the paperwork submitted and signed and communicate all these changes to the employees.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one more super quick one that came up yesterday, but in the throng, I didn't get a chance to pass it on. the county is putting in a new water line on Depot Street. For those of you who don't know, on Depot Street, we own approximately 1/3 of it. The county owns the other 2/3. We have a master meter at the 1/3 mark where we bill the county 2/3 of customers. The county is putting in a new line. They will be putting in a new portion on a part of ours, but not all of ours. And typically in these instances, they ask for a cost shared for it. We just got the bids back Monday, and the low bid is $109,000 to do all the work. Typically, when it's a small enough cost share, we don't always bring it to mayor and council. But given that the difference between a 20% cost share and a 25% cost share would push us over our procurement thresholds, I felt the need to bring it to you. You don't have to make a decision on it now, but if we
This is the extended part that goes out to Bill Price's farm.
Yep. So at a 20% cost share, our dollar value would be $21,000. At a 25% cost share, our dollar value would be $27,250. Now we can do less if you want to do 10%, or we can do more if you want to do 30%. Like I said, it's
It's up to us to decide.
however much cost share we want to do. It was not a requirement. The county didn't come to me with a deal and say you're on the hook for X percentage. It was more of how much do you want to get on for since it's your line, or you're using the line, or making money off of it, I guess. Like I said, you don't have to decide now. I just wanted to get it on your radar.
Okay.
So
Do you have a recommendation?
I would think 20% is fair. It's almost the difference between 20 grand and 30 grand. And it's, for the most part, it's their customers. We bill them and we make money off of it. But they're doing all the work. They're forwarding all the material. So they did all the engineering on it. I didn't have to do the engineering, which is nice. My recommendation would still be 20,000, so 20%, so about $20,000. So, thank you. That's all I have. I'm always good for one of those.
Lydia, anything? Bethany? Hayden?
I'm good.
Wayne? Lieutenant?
Good.
Okay. In that case, I guess we're done. So, we need to move to adjourn?
Motion.
Move to adjourn?
Do we adjourn this current work
Do you need to
session?
move to closed session?
We got it. Move and second to adjourn the work session. Any further discussion on that? All in favor say aye. Opposed no. Work session is adjourned.